1859 AD, 57:53 AM. Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species, a text that spawned into a global theory postulating an hypothesis that is passed off as fact. Institutions of learning began omitting all references to discoveries and artifacts that did not conform to the new paradigm. One of these knowledge filters was the Smithsonian Institute. John Taylor completed his work, The Great Pyramid. Why was it built and who built it? Though this was the date on the title page, the book did not get circulated till the following year in 1860. This was the first book that theorised that the Great Pyramid was of biblical importance. Dr. Lescarbot views black objects passing over the surface of the Sun, which were known to have been neither Mercury nor Venus. A coronal mass ejection from the Sun's surface, known as the Carrington event, reached the Earth and disabled telegraph wires throughout North America and Europe. The first US commercial oil well began production in Pennsylvania. The war between France and Germany concluded. The Catholic Habsburg dynasty armies were defeated. The papacy lost major holdings all throughout Italy. Pope Pius IX was reduced to rule over just the city of Rome and a small part of the countryside. On the Jesus Papers. 1860 AD, 57:54 AM. The Republican Party of the USA received its first victory with the election of Abraham Lincoln to the presidency, beating 3 other candidates. South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union. Lincoln was against the extension plans of the slave states, plans to annex territories from Mexico in the South and beyond. These states that formed the Confederacy of the South were South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, they electing Jefferson Davis as the president of their independent nation. The Confederate States of America drafted their own constitution specifically upholding the institution of slavery. Initially, Lincoln's objective was not the freeing of the African Americans in the United States, but the preservation of the Union that had quickly become 2 nations. Contrary to the historical propaganda put out by institutions of learning today, slavery was not the driving force for the breakaway. The international banking cartel of Europe had made it impossible for the southern states to sell their products. Commercial manipulation on the part of European banks isolated the southern states. Because the Rothschilds had been ousted by Andrew Jackson, they controlled Europe's imports and exports and created a situation where the southern states could not get what they needed for acceptable prices, and they couldn't sell what they manufactured and harvested. This was the 84th year, 7 times 12, since the Declaration of Independence, and 240 years since the Puritans landed at Plymouth Rock in 1620 AD. This was also exactly 180 years before the United States would again be broken apart, literally by the Phoenix Transit pole shift cataclysm of 2040 AD. John Taylor's book, The Great Pyramid, is an instant success as soon as it is released. His work theorising that the monument was a prophetic calendar erected by the biblical patriarchs, but he was scoffed at by the Royal Society. The academic world had already accepted that since the Great Pyramid is located at the edge of ancient Egyptian civilization, it must therefore be Egyptian. Taylor was the editor of the London Observer who had been inspired to write his book after Colonel Vyse returned from Egypt with his findings. Henry of the USA invented the repeat rifle. R.P. Gregg published his Meteorites and Fireballs from AD 2 to AD 1860, he being a member of the Geological Society of England. On April 11th over Pernambuco, the sky darkened on a cloudless day and planet Venus, although at this time at low visibility, shone brilliantly in the sky as around the Sun appeared a corona. In July, a meteorite coated with ice fell at Dhurmsala, India, and later many meteorites like different-sized cannonballs rained upon India. Angular black pebbles rained over Wolverhampton, England, so thickly they had to be shoved away. 1. A short history of the world. 2. Pyramid Quest. 3. Invisible Residents. 4. Book of the Damned. 1861 AD, 57:55 AM. The American Civil War begins on April 16th. The Confederate Army repelled Union forces at the First Battle of Bull Run, though the South had been badly outnumbered at Manassas, Virginia. The Civil War epitomised the internal conflict between Manasseh, Confederacy, and Ephraim, Union. This struggle for division reflected in the geographical name for the location of the first battle, Manassas. The US population at this time was about 31 million, of which in just 4 years of warfare, 600,000 would die. The real reason for the Civil War is best summed up by historian Andrew Carrington Hitchcock, quote, "Northern industrialists had used trade tariffs to prevent the southern states from buying cheaper European goods. Europe subsequently retaliated by stopping cotton imports from the South. Thus the South had been forced to pay more for goods while having their income slashed," unquote. Otto von Bismarck, Chancellor of Germany, admitted in 1876 that prior to the Civil War in America, it was already decided by the financial powers of Europe, Rothschilds, that the United States was becoming too powerful, with too many resources and land, and needed to be divided into two nations that could more easily be controlled economically. The issue of slavery, having been a political centre of controversy since the abolitionist societies of the 1700s, was used to exacerbate the division between the North and South. Gatling invents the machine gun. The legends of the giant squid came to life in this year when the French warship Alecton encountered and killed such a beast. The Great Comet was noteworthy in June because the Earth passed through its tail without any observable results. 1. Synagogue of Satan. 4. Book of Fabulous Beasts. 5. Introduction to Comets.